It is such a busy time here in southern Arizona. In my garden, I am putting up shade cloth to protect some of the things I planted earlier in the spring from the harsh summer sun. And I am also planting out new, fresh things like tomato plants and peppers so that I can get a second crop in before the frost comes in early November. But I'm also starting to think about what I need to plant for fall. Today is July 15th, just to give you a time reference point. And yes, it is already time to start thinking about which seeds we're going to be starting for our fall gardens. I think staying ahead of schedule and getting things in at the right time is one of the secrets to having a successful garden here in the Southwest. I'm not starting all of my fall seeds right now, but I am going to be starting a few varieties that are much slower to mature, and that's what I'm going to share with you today in this video. The first one is Brussels sprouts. Now, Brussels sprouts are probably the slowest to mature out of everything that I plant in my fall and winter garden. You're looking at 90 to 120 days, depending on what kind of Brussels sprout you like to plant. I like the Long Island Improved. That's probably my favorite Brussels sprout variety. I've had really good luck with it, but the secret is starting it a lot earlier than you start some of your other fall things, because it takes such a long time to mature. So 90 to 100 days is just when you're starting to pluck that first succulent Brussels sprout from the plant. It's important to note that Brussels sprouts will start to mature from the bottom to the top of the plant. So unlike some of those beautiful stalks of Brussels sprouts that you can buy in the store with all of them just fully mature, I find that they kind of slowly move their way up the plant as they mature. So I'm starting to harvest some of the lower ones while the top ones are still not ready to pick. So the days to maturity is at that point where you pluck that first Brussels sprout. Days to maturity is an interesting concept because it is not equal across all plant varieties. So with certain things like tomatoes and eggplants and Brussels sprouts and plants that you want to start ahead of time and then set seedlings out for, the days to maturity actually begins when you set that transplant or that seedling out into the soil. When it comes to things that you're going to direct sow, like maybe lettuces or arugula or radishes or other root crops, the days to maturity begins at the point of germination. So for Brussels sprouts, when I say that the days to maturity is 90 to 120 days, that means from the point that you're actually putting out a nicely sized seedling. So when you think about the number of weeks, it's probably 10, maybe 12 weeks before you can actually set that seedling out after planting the seed. That's why it's important to start early. When I was a kid, I thought I hated Brussels sprouts, and when I was a young adult, I thought I hated Brussels sprouts. That was a concept that lingered for quite some time. But it turns out it's because I was buying Brussels sprouts or eating Brussels sprouts from the frozen food aisle, and those just aren't very good. When you cook them up, depending on the cooking style you use, they can be pretty mushy and mealy. At least that's how I experienced them. When I started feeling more comfortable and venturing out in my own garden, I started growing Brussels sprouts myself. And the first couple of years, I had mediocre results, and it's because I didn't plant the seeds in time. I didn't realize how long it actually takes Brussels sprouts to mature. But once I got a hang of that, I realized that I actually really love Brussels sprouts. My favorite way to cook them is to harvest them, cut them in half, toss them in a little bit of olive oil and sea salt, roast them in the oven, and then when they come out and they're still hot, I drizzle a little bit of balsamic vinegar on them, and they are just really, really good. So you should try that if you are a Brussels sprout hater, and possibly you may be reformed. I did a little bit of research and I found an article from Utah State Extension that recommended 3 to 5 plants per person. So I tried that, and I can report to you that that's actually a really sweet spot to start with. I think that that is just enough plants. If you want to have Brussels sprouts a couple of times a week, try 3 to 5 plants per person. So for TJ and I, since it's just the two of us here, I planted 12. So that's obviously more than 3 to 5 plants, but I planned on 5 plants, and then I also wanted a couple of extra plants just in case something happened to them, because you never know if the plant will die if a pest gets it or whatever. So I always like to have a few extra. I know gardeners are not exactly moderate folks. We tend to get out of whack and plant either too much or too little. There's no in between. Guilty there. Normally I will err on the side of planting way too much. You would think that I was gardening for the masses instead of just the two of us, but you know, I am trying to do better with that, but I am making no claims that I'm actually doing better with that. So try 3 to 5 plants per person and see how that works for you. The next variety you really want to start early is onions. This is for bulb onions. This is not for scallions, green onions, bunching onions, chives, anything like that. This is just for the bulb onion that you are going to pull and either store or eat fresh. And that's because onions can actually take just as long as Brussels sprouts at 90 to 120 days, depending on which variety you want to plant. So I like to start from either seed or from transplants. And the transplants look like little miniature onion plants. And I order my onion starts from Dixondale Farms. They've got a lot of great varieties for short, intermediate, or long day, depending on where you live in the country. They've got information on their website as far as which variety you should be planting. In the south, you want short day. In the middle of the country, intermediate. And in the north, you want long day. And that has to do with day length and temperature and how well that variety will mature, whether it bolts or whether it bulbs up really well. So make sure you look at the information that they have on the website. This year, I'm going to be doing a little bit of both. Last year, I got all onion starts or onion transplants, the little miniature plants from Dixondale Farms, and I had really great luck with that. I am going to provide a list in the description below for the kinds of onions that I had really good luck with. I have a particular red onion that worked really well for me last year, which is a big deal because I have found that red onions just really struggle in the heat. I've tried several different kinds that are supposed to do well in my climate, in my area, and they have just really struggled and tended to bolt. But I found one that worked really well, so I'm going to share that with you, as well as some for sweet, white, and yellow. So definitely make sure you check the description box below. So if you want to start onions from seed, the benefit is that you will get a lot more varieties to choose from. If you want to just take the shortcut and let Dixondale Farms take care of all of that headache of starting the seeds, I would say order a bundle from them. Just know that the bundle is usually going to be, I think, about 4 dozen. So that's a lot of onion plants. So if that is more than you want to plant, maybe go into it and divide those and split the cost between a friend or something like that. Normally starting root vegetables from seed and then trying to transplant them just doesn't work very well. Things like turnips or carrots or potatoes or things like that, just it doesn't work very well. So you're better off to just start those directly in the ground. But when it comes to onions, it's a little bit different. If you gently tease those little tiny plants out, you can plant those and they work out really, really well. So they are an exception. We use onions every single day when we cook. We cook most of our meals from home, and it's very rare that we actually go out to eat. I would say we probably go out to eat on average about once per month, unless we're traveling. So we really do cook at home a lot. And I would bet we use 2 onions a day just with all of our cooking. So if you think for easy math, just 1 onion per day, that's 365 onions. So I try to start 400 to 500 onions. I know that sounds crazy, but I really like to have them to store and to be able to use because I am trying to grow as much food as I can here for us. And so I try to select varieties that I can store really well. All right, the next vegetable that I want to talk about starting early is celery. Celery is another one that takes a long time. 80 to 100 days is what you're looking at. One of my favorites is the Utah tall, or the tall Utah. I've heard people call it both things. I also really like the Tango, but the trick with celery is starting it early enough because it can really struggle if you've started it too late in the fall, because it really starts to heat up here in southern Arizona by April. And by that point, your celery is not going to do well. It's going to slow down its growth. It's going to get bitter. So really, if you want to start celery from seed, you need to do it right now in mid-July. So when it it comes to the number of plants per person for celery, it is recommended from Utah State Extension again that you plant 5 to 8 plants per person. And I think for me and the way I cook, that sounds like a lot. I think if I had one head or one bunch of celery per week, I think that that would do us just fine. But that is just me. It depends on how you cook at home and how much celery you use. For things like celery and Brussels sprouts and onions, it is really almost impossible to succession plant, and that means planting every few weeks so that you don't have the harvest all at once. So you need to think about that too. I don't like to waste food. Celery does not freeze well. It gets really mushy. So if I store it in my vegetable drawer, I can use several heads over a few months of time. So because of that, I am actually only going to start 12 celery plants. Just gives me a little bit of celery to use fresh to enjoy that fresh flavor. But I'm not really going to take up a lot of space for growing a lot of celery just because it is really hard to store and we don't use a ton of celery. So that is up to you. All right, so the last thing that I want to talk about are some of the herbs. And some of these herbs are actually warm weather herbs. It's just that it takes a long time to get them going. And since they're a little bit slow growing and a little tricky to start, I like to start them early. If I start the seeds in a pot that is big enough to accommodate them for several months, then they can just hang out underneath my lights in the house until it's time in the spring to set them out. So the big four for me that I am going to be starting right now are parsley, rosemary, thyme, and oregano. And I use a lot of those. I find that they take quite a while to reach the stage where they're going to be hardy enough to plant outside. I really like to grow herbs because buying them in those little plastic packages for $3 to $5 a pop is just so expensive. It's ridiculously expensive, and I just refuse to do it if I can help it. So if I can grow my own herbs in the summertime when it's warm, I'll try to dry a reasonable amount of them. I'll put back a couple of jars, and then I just kind of let the rest go to flower because the pollinators really like it, and then I'll start again the next season. So with some things, they will actually survive the winter. I've got some sage and some, what else do I have? Rosemary and some thyme that's actually made it through the winter, and it's on its second season. There are other things like that too, like marjoram is another big one, and sage also. So it kind of depends on how you cook, but I really like to get a head start on my herbs so that I have a nice mature plant to set out when the springtime temperatures are warm enough. I know it sounds really crazy to be starting fall things right now, but trust me, these four are really good to start right now. If you want to start from seed, if you want to hold off and buy them from a garden center, that is totally up to you and completely fine. But that is what I'm starting from seed this week. Now I will be back next week to talk about some of the other fall things that I'm going to be starting from seed. My goal is to start those things from seed August 1. So I want to share those with you next week so that you have a week or two to order seeds or to get your supplies together, whatever it is that you need, so that you have everything you need to go on August 1st. So join me next week for that. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Kara from Arizona. Until next time, happy gardening.